Or subpart E, identification of the troubled employees. Requirement of the laws. Perfectly with the subpart that prevents the use of the alcohol, drugs in connection with the converts, to cover the with each of the railroad must adopt and publish and implement the policy, design, and occur the facility, identification for the covered employee through abuse of the alcohol, drug with the power of the treatable to the condition to ensure such employees are provided with the opportunity to obtain the counseling treatment before the problems manifest themselves in detective violation of the part therefore hereafter voluntary referral policy and the policy designed for the foster of the employee participation, preventing the violation of the subpart, encouraging co-worker participation in direct enforcement of the part of the hereafter the co-worker report policy. The railroad must comply with the subpart adopting the public implementation policy meeting the specific requirements of the statute 219.403, 219.405, complying with 219.407. If the railroad complies with this part of the railroad adopting, publishing, and implementing the policy consistent with the 219.403, 405, the railroad must make such policy publications and announcing such policy available to the inspection of the FRA. Nothing in the subpart must be construed to require the payment of the compensation for any period of the employment that is out of the service of the unit of the voluntary of the referral of the co-worker, the report policy. Required the railroad to adhere with the voluntary referral co-worker, the report policy in case of the referral. The report is made with the purpose of within the effect of anticipating an imminent probable defection of the rule of violation, supervising employee, limiting the discretion of the railroad, dismissed otherwise discipline employee with a specific rule violation, criminal offense, except specifically provided with the subpart. Alright, 219.403, voluntary referral policy. Scope of the section prescribes the minimum standard of the voluntary referral policy, and nothing in the section restricts the railroad adopting the publishing and implementing the voluntary referral policy to adopt the fourth amount more favorable conditions to avoid the trouble of alcohol, drug abuse for the responsible consistent with the railroad responsible to prevent statute 219.102 and 102, 101 and 102. The railroad required provision of voluntary referral policy must include the following provision: the covered employee who is affected with the alcohol, drug abuse for the problem maintained with the employment, the relationship with the railroad if before the employee is charged with conducting with the railroad sufficient with the warrant dismissal of the employee seek for the assistance through the railroad for the employee's alcohol, drug use, and problems. Offer reserved as such the assistance and another employee by the representative of the other employee collective bargaining unit of the railroad must specify whether or not under what circumstances policy provides the acceptance of the referral from other resources, including as an option of the railroad supervisor employee. Acceptance may be provided with the paragraph C of the section railroad treat the referral subsequent handling, including counseling and treatment of the confidential. The railroad will, to the extent necessary, the treatment of the rehabilitation, grant the employee leave of the absence from the railroad for a period necessary to comply with the primary treatment that establishes control over the employee's alcohol drug problem. The policy must also leave the absence if not less than 45 days necessary for the proposed meeting of the initiated initial treatment needs. Except for the may be provided in paragraph C2 of the section of the employee will determine the service of the recommendation substance of the brief of the professional employee. Approval to return the service may not be unreasonable withheld. The restrict the certified locomotive engineer candidate with the certification railroad must meet the requirements of 240, 119. For the chapter, the optional provision of the voluntary referral policy may include all the following provisions of the option of the railroad. The policy that provides with the rules of confidentiality if the way of the employee at any time refuses to cooperate with the recommended counsel for the counseling treatment and or the employee with a later determination after the investigation they have involved with the alcohol drug related disciplinary offenses growing out of the subsequent contact with the policy may require the successful completion of return to service of medical examination for the condition of the reinstatement of the service. The policy may provide that it does not apply with any employee with the previously has been assisted with about the railroad under the policy and program substantial consistent with the section who has previously elected to waive the investigation 219.405 of the co-worker reporting policy. The policy provided with the order to invoke with the benefits of an employee that must report with the contact with designated with the railroad either not during non-duty hours at the time of when the employee is off duty, while impaired, otherwise in compliance with the railroad alcohol drug rules and consistent with the subpart. 219.405 Co-worker Return Report Policy. Scope of the section prescribes the minimum standard with the co-worker report policy. Nothing in the section restricts the railroad from adopting, publishing, and implementing the policy for the more favorable conditions employees troubled by alcohol and drug abuse. The consistent with the consistent railroads responsible to prevent violation of 219.102 and 102, 101 and 102. An employee represents relationship with the co-worker report policy provided with the covered employee may maintain the employment relationship with the railroad following the alleged first offense with under this part of the railroad alcohol, drug, and rules subject to the condition of the procedure contained in section C. The general condition of the procedure alleged violation must come to the attention of the railroad. Resolve the report of the co-worker that may employ with apparently unsafe for the work within was for the period due to the violation of the part of the railroad alcohol drug use. The railroad representative that determined the employee with the violation railroad immediately with the removal of the employee from the service of the accident in accordance with the existing policy of the procedure. The employee must elect to waive the investigation of the rule of the charge if they may contact with the substance abuse professional with a reasonable period of the specified policy. The substance abuse professional must be scheduled the necessary interview with the employee to complete with the evaluation of 10 calendar days of the employee to contact with the professional within a request evaluation with under the policy unless it becomes necessary for the review for the employee for the further evaluation. In such a case, in each case, the necessary evaluation must be completed with the 20 days of the professional employee's contact with the professional. When the treatment is required, if the substance abuse professional determines that the employee is affected with the psychological chemical dependency of the alcohol, drug, or the by another unethical treatment, the mental physical disorder involving abuse of the alcohol, drug, the primary manifesting with the following condition, the procedure will apply. The railroad must execute the necessary treatment of the rehabilitation, grant the employee leave with the absence of the railroad for the period necessary to complete the primary treatment, establish control of the employee's alcohol drug problem. The policy allows for the leave of the absence of not less than 45 days necessary for the purpose of immediately initial treatment needed. Hey, Mama. Must agree with the undertaking the successful complete with the course of the treatment of the deemed acceptable substance abuse professional. The railroad must promptly, with the return of the employee surface of the recommendation of the substance abuse professional within employed and established with the control of the substance abuse problem. Return of the surface of the altered condition of successful completion with the return of the surface of medical examination. Proof with the return of the surface does not be unreasonable withheld. Following the return of the service employee with the further condition withholding of discipline may be necessary with regard to participate in a reasonable program to follow the treatment for the period of not exceeding 60 months from the day of the employee with the original withdrawal of the service. Within the treatment is not required that the substance abuse professional determines that the employee is not effective with the identifiable treatable mental physical disorder. The railroad must return the employee to the service within 5 days after the completion of evaluation. During the following hours of service period, the railroad may require the employees to participate in the program education and training concerning the effect of the alcohol and drugs, occupational transportation, safety. The following up test the railroad may conduct for the return service of the following up the test described in 219.404, but the employee who waived the investigation is determined to be ready for the return of service under this section. 219.407, alternate policies. In lieu of the policy 219.403, the voluntary referral 219.405, the co-worker report that both the railroad may be to adopt the policy and implement the respect of the particular class for the craft of the coverage of employee with the alternate policy, the policy having their purpose of the prevention of alcohol drug use for the railroad operation, and such policy have the written concurrence of the recognized representative of such employees. The concurrence of the recognized employee representative of the alternate policy that must be evidence for the collective bargaining agreement. They have any of the other document describing the class for the craft employees which alternate policies apply with the agreement. The other document must make with the express the reference for the part intention for the railroad employee, the representative of the activities. Representative of the alternate policies apply with the lieu of the policy required in Section 219, 403, and 405 or both. The railroad must follow the agreement of the document described in the paragraph B of the section with the Associated Administrative Safety of the alternate policy of the amendment to revoke. The railroad must follow the notice of the amendment. The revocation lasts at least 30 days prior to the effect of the day of such action. The section does not execute the railroad adopting publishing implementation policy required within Section 219, 403, and 405 with respect to any of the group covered employees not within the coverage of the appropriate alternate policy. Alright, so part F, pre-employment test.